this evening's virtual hearing. This is a community conversation on the 2024 capital improvements budget. First, let me start off with a couple of thank yous. I want to thank my colleague who is here, Councilmember Remy, for his participation. And also want to thank all the rest of my colleagues who may pop in. This is a virtual hearing, but also thank them for their participation throughout this process. The department leaders also who are here with us to discuss the administration's plans for the proposed capital budget. I want to thank you all for all the hard work that you have put into this, and also the lens of equity that the administration took in looking at this year's 2024 capital improvements budget. Also want to again thank our area commissions and civic associations for their input to date. I know we've had robust conversations with many of them and also have gotten feedback from all of our area commissions. Additionally, I want to thank our community engagement team who is with us tonight, Cole Calloway, Harrison Poku, and Stanley Gates in particular, for putting together bus tours for myself and other council members to really go out into the community to not only, again, get feedback from our neighbors, but also to see, touch, and feel what they have sent to us as input. And of course, want to thank all of the residents who are joining us today, either here in chambers or virtually from the comfort of your home. The purpose of these hearings is to present the city's capital improvement budget and capital improvement program to residents. Tonight's conversation is the first of public meetings in a series of 3 public conversations that we will have. This one will be virtual and the other 2 will be in person. The capital projects we are discussing tonight concern physical assets here in the city. So unlike our operating budget, we're talking about roads, waterways, and other physical infrastructure, the things that we touch and feel every single day. We understand how important these infrastructure investments are. And for that reason, it has been a long-standing practice in the city of Columbus to set aside a quarter for every dollar of collected via the income tax for capital projects. This funding structure ensures that the city is able to consistently put out these budgets every single year. The city's AAA bond rating ensures that the city can borrow money at low interest rates and, as a result, saves Columbus residents millions upon millions of dollars every single year through these lower interest rates. Tonight's meeting is structured, and I'll go through that really quickly, that our hearing will be simply in the structure that we will start with a presentation from our Department of Finance and Management, followed by presentations from Public Service, Recreation and Parks, Public Safety, the Development Department, and Public Utilities. Following the presentations and questions from council members, we will open the floor to speakers who have signed up to speak and will address questions asked by residents virtually. Folks who know, I like to follow the rules. We want folks to sign up to speak. But if you are watching with us virtually, if you ask questions in the chat, my team is here, our team is here, as well as other folks are here to answer your questions. So we make sure that we get those addressed. As questions come through, I will do my best to ask them during the department's presentations. If there are residents' questions that were not addressed during the department's presentation, I will ask them during the public testimony portion of the hearing. And then again, if we don't have those answers for you today, we'll make sure that we follow up with you. My staff is currently monitoring those comment sections so that we can answer any questions that may pop up. Depending on specificity, any of those questions raised by residents, either I or the department head will respond to each question. The capital budget you'll hear about tonight is a proposed budget, not the final. It is through these public input processes and community conversations that we will arrive at a final product that council will vote on. With us tonight, we have Chris Long, the Deputy Director, and my partner in good in the Department of Finance and Management, Steve Wenzel with our Deputy Director in the Department of Public Service, Craig Murphy, Deputy Director of Capital Conservation and Strategy in the Department of Recreation and Parks. That's long to put on a business card. Dan Jayangardella, Deputy Director in the Department of Public Safety, who is joining us virtually, and Bill Webster, Deputy Director in the Department of Development, who is here with us. And last but certainly not least, joining us virtually, we have with Public Utilities, Tom Crawford, the Capital Fiscal Manager in the Department of Utilities. Before I move into our directors and presentations and kick it over to Deputy Director Long, Councilmember Remy, any opening remarks that you want to share this evening?
Thank you so much, Chair Bankston. I just want to thank you for the work that you've put into this, getting us ready for this public comment portion of it and the opportunity for the community to learn. It's a lot of work to put all this together, and I know you have a great team behind you in order to do that, but certainly appreciate your leadership as we move into this capital budget season. And then to thank the Department of Finance and Deputy Director Long and your team for all the work that you've put into it. I know all the departments have really done a lot to make sure that it was thoughtful, equitable, and certainly one that we can all be proud of as we look to better improve our community and the city that we so love and clearly. But anyway, thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing the report out.
Absolutely, and thank you, Councilmember Remy, for being here. Also with us virtually, I'm just told, we have my other partner in good, Vice Chair of the Economic Development and Small Minority Business Committee, Councilmember Lourdes Barroso de Padilla, who is with us virtually. Councilmember, is there any opening remarks that you would like to share before we get started?
Thank you, Chair Bankston. Again, I would just echo our colleagues' comments. So thank you to you and your team. But certainly, as I hope that folks are watching at home, I know giving this virtual short option is helpful for folks if they can't join us in person, but I'm excited to hear from our residents as well for what they are looking for in their communities and how we can ensure that we are meeting the needs of our residents. And, this is also a learning process for us and gives us opportunities for us to think about not just a moment in time with the budget for now, but what does this look like, especially as we are making significant investments in the city's infrastructure with, zone-in, with Link-Us, and other things that are coming that are going to create exciting opportunities for our communities and for our residents. So I apologize for being a little late. I wish I could be in council chambers with all of you, but I am excited to dig into our hearing from our departments and hearing from residents. So thank you.
And thank you again, Councilmember, particularly as Councilmember Lourdes Barroso de Padilla knows, chairing public service, that is one of the committees that we feel in touch the most, and particularly around transit and what is coming before our voters in Link-Us. Thank you for your partnership and leadership. And also, don't apologize. I'm glad that you're at home in the comfort of your home. My team, JP, made me be in here today. I was going to be in sweatpants at home with this hearing. But no, with that, again, I want to thank all my colleagues for being here. And there will, of course, be, again, 2 in-person options for our residents moving forward. Now I will turn over to Chris Long, our Deputy Director in the Department of Finance, to kick off the department presentation. With that, Deputy Director, it's on you.
Thank you, Chair Bankston, Councilmember Remy, Councilmember Barroso de Padilla, Council President Harden, and all council members. We really appreciate this opportunity this afternoon to discuss the Mayor Ginther's 2024 capital improvement budget. We're certainly appreciative of all departmental representatives here tonight and as well as those joining virtually. As Chair Bankston mentioned, my name is Chris Long. I serve as a Deputy Director in the Department of Finance under our Director, Kathy Owens, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, but she's on a well-deserved vacation. So tonight, you'll be hearing from various departments about specific capital improvement projects in various regions of the city. However, before we get into those specifics, I thought it would be helpful to really just go over some high-level basics about the city's capital budget. So this afternoon, I'll be talking about such things as, what constitutes a capital budget, and a lot of my remarks will echo some of the things that Chair Bankston discussed tonight. We'll be talking about how does the city pay for its capital budget. We'll be talking about what role does finance play, and what are the next steps in the process. So the city has 2 main budgeting cycles, if you will. One is operating and one is capital. I think to understand capital, you really need to look at what constitutes an operating budget first. And this is similar to what Chair Bankston said, but operating budget funds the daily operations of the city. How I kind of keep it straight is it funds the three S's, staffing, supplies, and services. These are the programs and services that the city offers its residents, and it's funded primarily through income tax collections, enterprise fund revenues, and property tax revenues. What we're here to talk about this afternoon is obviously the capital budget. And as Chair Bankston mentioned, if the operating budget funds programs and services, the capital budget essentially funds where those programs and services are provided. So these would be things like recreational facilities, our streets, our roads, our public safety locations such as fire stations and police substations. So very much the bricks and mortar associated with city operations and community investments. We also look at things from a capital's perspective a little bit differently than we do our operating. We typically look at our operating budget on an annual basis, year by year. Our capital budget, we take a forward-looking approach to that. So we have a near-term and a longer-term outlook associated with our capital budget. We have a 6-year capital improvement program, so we're constantly looking at what the future capital investment needs are going to be of the city. It's a 6-year forward-looking analysis that, in this case, we'll look at the years 2024 through 2029. And then what we're here specifically to talk about tonight is the capital improvement budget, which is the first year of our capital improvement program. As you might expect, capital investments are large, multi-million-dollar, multi-year projects, as Chair Bankston mentioned. And as such, we don't have the cash on hand within any given fiscal year to pay for all of those things. So as Chair Bankston mentioned, we have a 25% set aside for every dollar of income tax collections that the city receives. 25 cents or 25% of that is deposited into an income tax set aside fund. And those dollars are used for debt coverage, for debt management. We issue municipal bonds in the city to essentially pay for these capital investments. And income tax set aside is one of the mechanisms through which we pay it. The other mechanism is enterprise fund revenues. Those would be utility ratepayer dollars through our Department of Public Utilities. Our next slide really just gives an overview of what is involved with capital budget development. So the Finance Department plays a fairly central role in that process, as Councilmember Remy mentioned. Finance first works in partnership with our city auditor to set funding limits. We always want to ensure that the city has the financial resources to responsibly fund current and future capital needs. And so we work with the auditor to establish funding capacity. We work with city departments to compile all departmental capital improvement requests across the city, and we present those to the mayor for his review and consideration. We then submit to council, as we did last evening, capital improvement budget and capital improvement program legislation. We're very grateful to City Council for their time and consideration and eventual adoption of the budget. Oh, and one last thing on this topic, as Chair Bankston mentioned, we're very fortunate that the city maintains a AAA bond rating with respect to its bonds. So it's a great benefit to the city in that it's a reflection of the city's overall financial strength, but as Chair Bankston mentioned, lower interest costs equate to more capacity and the more ability to invest in our communities. This year's capital budget, we're proud to say, was developed through the lens of equity. This mayor created and adopted the city's official equity initiative called Opportunity Rising. Opportunity Rising is really built around three foundational principles and concepts around safe and resilient communities, the health and well-being of residents, and the strength and economic stability of our local economy. And so this year, in partnership with departments, we were able to craft a budget. The mayor was able to present a budget that's been informed by the Opportunity Rising initiative. And more information you'll see on the link. You're welcome to visit that link. There's much more information on Opportunity Rising. This next slide gives a 10-year look back at history of the city's capital budget. I think it's amazing and incredible, right, that what you're seeing here is a capital budget that's roughly doubled in the last 10 years. Back in 2015, the city had a little under $1 billion annually, which is still a lot of money, right, for capital budget. We're proud to turn into City Council for your consideration a budget that's approaching $2 billion. And this is really a testament to our vibrant, inclusive, and strong local economy, and most importantly, to really the resiliency and strength of residents. This pie chart that you see before here is just a sort of a snapshot of the 2024 capital budget itself. Each year, our capital budget is a mix of different revenue sources, as I mentioned previously. So the sort of the red area of the pie, that would be the enterprise-funded portion of this year's capital budget. So this year's capital budget is $1.99 billion, of which approximately 53% is funded through our Department of Public Utilities and their ratepayer enterprise funding structure. And then roughly 44% is funded through income tax set-aside dollars. That's at 25 cents that we reserve on every income tax dollar that comes in. And then nearing the end of the presentation here for finance, but in addition to finance playing a central role in developing the overall capital budget, finance is also a user agency. And so sort of the management aspect of finance and management is the Office of Construction Management, our Division of Facilities Management, and our Real Estate Management offices are all housed within the Department of Finance. And so what goes along with that is overseeing the management and renovation, acquisition and disposition of over 100 city facilities. And so as such, there's a number of renovations and general upkeep that we need to make sure all city or most city facilities maintain. So you'll see things in here such as facility renovations, roof renovations, municipal campus renovations, security enhancements, safety upgrades. Those are all sort of annual routine capital investments that we request. The largest line item is municipal court building, $125 million. This has been a project that's been in development for quite some time, and of course involves the design and construction of new municipal court building here downtown. And then just the final slide is some contact information should anyone have questions about the budget. And you'll notice there's a link there at the bottom. It's columbus.gov/capital. Feel free to check out that link. There's an incredible level of detail on this year's capital budget submission. And with that, I will thank you, Chair Bankston. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director. I'll pause. Any of my colleagues that are with us, and I know that we were trying to get the link to Councilmember Day Ackhauer on finance's presentation. Again, I always want to remind folks that our Department of Finance, again, really manages all of the money, but our different departments really are the ones that put forward projects, and they're the ones who deliver those projects for our residents. So that's why when you look at Department of Finance's budget is not necessarily the largest or the most robust, but it's really more around facilities that the city owns. In particular, because I know this has been a big ticket that we've been talking about for a while, is our municipal courthouse. And folks that have been there know, I could say it's antiquated at best. But if you could just talk about the scale of that project, and I guess I'm leading the question a little bit here, but just our growth and why it's necessary. And then just kind of just where we are with it, because I know that there's been a lot of things that have happened. We announced this probably around COVID or pre-COVID, and so there's been some delays. And so if you could just give us kind of an update on where we are and why that project is necessary for us.
Certainly, Chair Bankston. As you mentioned, the existing municipal court building was designed and built in the 1970s, and as such is antiquated as it relates to programming and contemporary Justice Center standards. And so this is one of the most complex, vertical construction projects the city's ever undertaken. And so it's taken a lot of time to get the right design team on board, the right construction management team on board. But essentially, this will be a multi-story, dozens of courtrooms, security features, and currently it's in phase 1 of design. We anticipate design to hopefully be wrapping up sometime late next year with the construction bids to go out late next year. And we anticipate hopefully construction would commence shortly thereafter and be completed by early 2029. Happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Director. And I know we haven't set a goal yet, but if you can just talk to also, I think, the administration's commitment to diversity and goals on that particular project, because it is a lot of taxpayer dollars going towards that.
Yes, thanks, Chair Bangston. Yes, there will be a community benefits agreement that will be structured around this particular project, and there will be a small minority business goals attached to that for participation. That's, yes, very important to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we highlight that, because that is something that is important to us. I know specifically on council is making sure that large projects like that reflect the diversity of our city. Councilmember Remy, Councilmember Barroso de Padilla, Councilmember Day Akauer, I'm not sure if you're able to join us yet. Seeing no questions, I will move on. We next have Steve Wenzel, the Deputy Director of our Department of Public Service, and I will kick it over to you now.
Good afternoon, Chair Bangston, Councilmember Remy, Councilmember Barroso de Padilla. Thank you for this opportunity to briefly speak about the Department of Public Service's 2024 capital improvements budget and to detail some of the projects that are proposed. The Department of Public Service's proposed 2024 capital improvements budget totals $248.6 million this year. That's made up of $77.9 million in new funding and $170.7 million in carryover funding that will invest in roadways, sidewalks, bikeways, bridges, and other projects that will improve the quality of life in our neighborhoods. Some of the guiding principles we use when we're developing our capital improvements budget includes the mission statement for the Department of Public Service is to deliver unparalleled public services in Columbus to enhance equitable mobility, safety, and quality of life. Public service focuses on capital projects to create equitable mobility access to jobs, schools, healthcare, and other resources. The Department of Public Service is leading and planning design and construction of many city infrastructure projects, supporting Vision Zero principles to slow speeds and create safe conditions for pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, and transit users. As in most years, the centerpiece of Public Service's proposed capital budget is $53.5 million in new funding and carryover funding for the city's resurfacing program. The Department of Public Service maintains approximately 5,700 lane miles of city roadways. The resurfacing program mills the existing pavement and replaces it with new asphalt, performs partial and full depth pavement repairs, installs new ADA curb ramps, curb repair, and pavement markings. This year, there will be 4 major resurfacing packages totaling $42 million. With these projects, the department plans to resurface over 275 streets and construct over 1,100 ADA curb ramps across the city. The department also plans to spend another $1.6 million in brick and concrete rehab for some of our city streets throughout the city. Some of the streets, or a sample of the streets that will be resurfaced as a part of these projects, include Gladstone Avenue from 18th Avenue to 25th Avenue, Lehman Road from Gender Road to Lehman Meadows, Echo Road from McIntosh Drive to Scottsfield Drive, and Glenchester Road from Galloway Road to Hilliard Rome Road. Included in this year's capital budget is new funding in the amount of $3.5 million and another $5 million in carryover funding for our bridge rehab program. This type of work typically performed on these bridges include patching of concrete surfaces, resurfacing, painting, replacing of expansion joints, and crack sealing. Also included in this year's budget proposal for 2024 is $18 million associated with the Linked Us initiative. That's $15 million in carryover funding, as well as another $3 million in new funding. Link Us is Central Ohio's comprehensive mobility initiative aimed at addressing growth, affordability, and opportunity gaps within our community, making significant investment in transit, sidewalks, bikeways, trails, and roadway improvements. One of the key projects within the Linked Us initiative is the Northwest Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT corridor, which has been allocated $4 million in the 2024 capital improvements budget. An additional $3 million in new funding has been requested for the corridor's design completion. The remaining $11 million of the allocated budget will contribute to advancing multiple projects that improve transit and pedestrian access along the Northwest Corridor. Additionally, these funds will facilitate the ongoing design efforts for the West Broad Street and East Main Street BRT corridors. Also included in this proposed capital improvements budget are other important investments in our community. This budget proposal includes $2.8 million in new funding and carryover funding, which is leveraged by $1.3 million in grant funding from the Ohio Department of Transportation for the intersection improvements at Cleveland Avenue and Hudson Street project. This project consists of reconstruction to the signal to improve signal head visibility at northbound and southbound left turn lanes, at a westbound right turn lane, and improve pedestrian safety along the south side of Hudson Street. The 2024 budget proposal includes $1.8 million in new funding for the intersection improvements at Georgesville and Hall Road project, which is leveraging another $1 million in grant funds from the Ohio Department of Transportation. This project includes improvements to the traffic signal at Georgesville and Hall Road intersection, along with additional right turn lanes in the southbound and eastbound directions, and a shared use path along the south side of Hall Road from Georgesville to Durer Road. Another project included in the 2024 budget proposal is right-of-way acquisition costs associated with the Livingston Avenue 18th Street to Nelson Road project at $2.2 million. This project consists of designing improvements to the Livingston Avenue corridor from the 18th Street to Nelson Road. A safety study was initiated by the city that included public engagement with a steering committee made up of community leaders. The resulting recommendation is to perform lane reallocation to reduce travel lanes, improve safety, lowering vehicle speeds, providing safe bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and improving street aesthetics. This project was awarded a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation for up to $12 million to support the city's goal with Vision Zero Columbus. This is focused on ending crash-related fatalities and serious injuries while increasing safety and healthy, equitable mobility for all. This budget request includes $792,000, leveraging another $575,000 in community development block grant funds for the intersection improvements at Cleveland and Myrtle Avenue project. This project includes realignment of Cleveland Avenue through the intersection with Myrtle Avenue. Work includes curb removal and installation, resurfacing, full signal replacement, reinstallation of interconnect, relocation of street lighting and power lines, water line lowering, and installation of storm sewer down Myrtle Avenue. Replacement of the signal and fixing the deficient curve will enhance safety at the intersection. This budget proposal includes $8.5 million, which is represented by $3.1 million in carryover funding, and another $5.4 million in new funding for the city's Vision Zero initiative. The Vision Zero Columbus program is focused on ending crash-related fatalities and serious injuries on our streets, while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. The Vision Zero Columbus Action Plan 2023 to 2028 outlines specific actions and strategies focused on eliminating traffic fatalities and serious injuries in our cities. This $8.5 million commitment continues the implementation of this action plan. A sample of Vision Zero projects included in this proposal are roadway Eastmore Boulevard from Main Street to Broad Street project. This will construct traffic calming alternatives on Eastmore Boulevard to reduce vehicle speeds. The project will be phased and monitored for speed reduction, planning for striping and pavement markings improvements as the first phase of the work will be included. There's also another project, it's the roadway multimodal Mount Vernon Avenue Phase 1 project at $600,000. This project consists of design of preferred alternatives for the Bronzeville and Mount Vernon Avenue Mobility Safety Action Plan to reduce vehicle speeds and create greater mobility options for residents. This 2024 capital budget proposal includes $31.4 million in new and carryover funding for mobility safety improvements, which includes sidewalks, bikeways, and shared use paths. Included in the mobility funds is construction funding in the amount of $2.1 million to install sidewalks to fill in gaps along both sides of Courtright Road, running from Groves Road to Refugee Road, including new curb storm sewer to be installed. The 2024 budget also includes $800,000 in design costs for the pedestrian safety 17th Avenue project. This project involves the replacement of curb and sidewalks along 17th Avenue from I-71 to Bellter Boulevard. These improvements include signal replacement and installation of bump outs. This budget includes $817,000 for construction of the pedestrian safety Walford Street, Charbot Drive, and Northtown Boulevard sidewalks project. This project will install sidewalk and fill in gaps along both sides of Walford Street from Belcher Drive to Morris Road, and on Charbot Drive from Tamarack Boulevard to Carahan Road, and Northtown Boulevard from Morris Road to Jonathan Court. And lastly, we have the Operation Safe Walks Refugee Road from No Bixby to Blue Moon project. Is included at $5 million for construction. This project consists of constructing sidewalk along the north side of Refugee Road, running from No Bixby Road to Blue Moon Drive, and on the south side of Refugee Road, from No Bixby Road to the existing sidewalk just west of Glenbrier Street. The 2024 capital improvements budget also includes $8.8 million for refuse collection vehicles and containers to replace and update the division's fleet that service over 346,000 households every week. Some of this equipment will be dedicated to support the Clean Neighborhoods Initiative to address the persistent problem of illegal dumping in our neighborhoods. Lastly, looking ahead at our priorities in the capital improvements program, that's the program that runs from 2025 to 2029 that Deputy Director Long had mentioned. This is our planning tool that we use when we're looking forward and measuring our capital program over the next 6 years. We're going to continue our investment in Vision Zero initiative, funding about $5.3 million each year for a total of $26.5 million. Our resurfacing dollars funded for that period of time will be $20 million each year for a total of $100 million over the 5-year period, as well as continuing our mobility funding at $6 million per year or $30 million. And finally, our bridge rehab program at $3.4 million per year or $17 million. Again, I'd like to thank Council for the opportunity to present Public Services proposed 2024 capital improvements budget. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Deputy Director, for that presentation. I will also, again, wait to see if my colleagues have any questions. I just want to highlight a couple projects that I in particular am proud of. In particular, that's the Hudson and Cleveland Avenue project, as well as Myrtle and Cleveland Avenue project. If folks are familiar with that intersection in Linden, it's been problematic for a long time. And so Want to thank the department for really looking at that. Hudson Street overall is a huge part of the One Linden Community Plan, which I had the pleasure of working on. And really, I think getting that right is going to really help that corridor. There was a question that popped into the chat regarding Livingston. I just want to address it because I think I can answer it, but if you want to add to it, you can. The question was really about speeding on Livingston Avenue. And so to Miss Joanne, I just want to say that making the street, doing that road diet where we have one lane of traffic in each direction and a center turn lane for the most part of the stretch will naturally slow down traffic because right now, currently with the configuration with 2 lanes, it makes it unsafe in that you have folks trying to turn left and folks trying to get around them to continue the flow of traffic. And that naturally keeps the pace of traffic much faster when we have 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. So this will naturally slow it as well as narrow your eye when you're driving. When the street is wider and there's not as many improvements in the right-of-way, naturally we want to speed and go faster. We've done these improvements on the other side of Livingston Avenue between the city of Columbus and Bexley, and we've seen tremendous slowdown in speeds as well as pedestrian and vehicle crashes. And so we're hoping to see that same improvement along this stretch of Livingston Avenue. I sound like an engineer right now, but I'm going to stop there because that's dangerous. Director, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that about the speeding on Livingston Avenue and what that particular project will do.
Chair Bankston, no, you are correct. You definitely sound like an engineer. That is really.
If I hang around you guys long enough, that's what happens. That's what happens.
That's really the main purpose of the project is to make it safer. I mean, we know that this stretch of Livingston Avenue, currently the way it's configured, is not safe for the residents. So by, like you're saying, shrinking down the road and creating the road diet is going to slow those speeds down. And we're trying to duplicate the successes that we've had on the other part of Livingston also. We're currently in the design phase for this project. So the next step after that, it will be this right-of-way acquisition cost of $2.2 million. Because as you shrink the road and you add sidewalks and shared use paths, we have to acquire a right-of-way for that. So and then after that, we'll move into the construction phase in the next few years. So, and this was a big project because we did get that federal funding of $12 million, which is really good for the city. We're going to kick in another $12 million to get the project complete. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. And I just have 2 more questions, and I'll kick it over to my colleagues. I ask this question every capital budget hearing, so I know it gets a little redundant, but can you just walk us through again our process of how we prioritize street repavement? Because I know that is a huge thing that is top of mind for many residents. How we prioritize that, what are the things that we look for? And then if someone wants, for instance, there's an issue with their street, how do they contact your team to have them come take a look?
Thank you, Chair Bankston. Yeah, the first thing I'll say is definitely reach out via 311 to us for any issues you might be having with your street, or if it's a paving issue, if it's a pothole issue, if you want to see sidewalks, reach out via the 311 mechanism to get in contact with us. So you hear a lot of us say, as hanging around with us, is we hear about pavement condition numbers or PCN numbers. So that's one of the factors that we look at when we're evaluating streets. We assign each street a certain number based on the condition of that street. So we go out and we do research, we hire a consultant, we do core samples, things like that, to determine what is the number, how bad or how good is that street. So that's just one of the factors. We actually look at the traffic of the street also. So if you're talking about a residential street, it might have less traffic than necessarily like a James Road street. So we take that factor into consideration of how much traffic that street is getting, just as a factor. We get input from our street maintenance staff. These are the gentlemen that are out filling the potholes, out in the streets every day doing street sweeping. So we take their input of things that don't look normal in our roadways that might need to be put on a resurfacing list. As I mentioned, 311, we listen to the public. We look at when the resurfacing was done last. We try to get anywhere between 15 and 10, 20, 25 years out of our resurfacing projects. We look at past resurfacing projects and when that might have been done. Is there something happening with the roadway that isn't extending the life of it? So we kind of take that into factor. As well as we kind of distribute the resurfacing around the city. So it's better for us to kind of package these, and you hear us talk about package 1 or package 2 or package 3, to group those streets like in the northwest corridor or an east corridor to get the better bang for the buck, for the city. Because we're not moving the consultant or the contractor around the city all the time, so they're in one area. So it helps us get those economies of scale. And we look at other projects. We don't want to resurface a street if our friends at Utilities is getting ready to do a water line in the next year. So we might hold off a year or move up a resurfacing a street and do it at the same time we're doing the water line. So we kind of look at conflicts and other projects that are going around throughout the city. So we take into a lot of different categories and factors when we're looking at resurfacing streets.
And again, remind us, what is the typical lifespan that we're looking at when we do resurface a street? Because, I mean, some may feel like they're, at their lifespan, but what is that typical lifespan that we're looking at?
It kind of varies depending on the street, if it's an arterial street or if it's a residential street or if it's we say we try to get anywhere from 15 to 25 years out of a street when it's resurfaced.
Gotcha. And then my last question is around sidewalks, which are always a fun topic because we are a sprawling city. Just for folks' information, how expensive, right? When we say a mile for a sidewalk, roughly how much does that cost us? And then two, to that question, same question with our street resurfacing. How do we prioritize where we are putting sidewalks? Because again, we don't have the ability to, I think, put them everywhere where they're needed. And so we do, again, have to prioritize where we're putting those.
Thank you, Chair Bankston. Yeah, it is, we don't have the resources to, get every sidewalk in every street in the city. We have roughly probably 1,600 miles, I believe, of streets that don't have sidewalks currently. And we kind of look at a figure of around $400 per linear foot, which equates to like $2.1 million per mile. So when you start adding up the costs, it can get to be quite expensive. So we try to really prioritize where we're going to put them with our limited resources that we have. So some of the things, again, we look at some of the same things that we look at with resurfacing, the amount of vehicular traffic, the number of 311 requests we have. We focus on neighborhoods that are some of our opportunity neighborhoods that are some of our older neighborhoods that might, some of the sidewalks deteriorating more quickly than some of our other sidewalks. We look at connections to bus routes. We want to try to get people to buses and jobs and stores. Look at schools, definitely look at schools and what sidewalks are around schools. And we make those a higher priority. And we look at other funding sources to help us with those projects too. And we also look at crash data with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission and see where some of our pedestrian accidents are. So we take it into a lot of different accounts when we're looking at that prioritization of sidewalks.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And that's this new installation. That's not even keeping up with repairing, right?
Yeah.
Existing sidewalks. I'll stop there. Any questions from my colleagues virtually or in person? And I will say this because I was just checking my phone. She said I had no question, but she was on the bus tour with me. And Councilmember Dayakauer is very excited about the projects that are on the west side. And I know some of our area commissioners were as well. So thank you to our representative from Public Service that was on that bus tour with us. Councilmember Remy.
Thank you so much. Oh,
I'm sorry, Madam, I got to default to Madam Chair. on
yeah,
this one.
of
Sorry.
course.
Our Chair of Public Service. Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, you make your chair of public service very proud whenever you start to sound like an engineer because that means that learning is happening. So I appreciate that. And thank you for asking
I still think
questions today.
it's still scary, but.
They are, it is scary when we start sounding that way, but it shows some things are sinking in and we're starting to learn the methodology. So thank you for asking about the resurfacing because that's incredibly important. I mean, it's one of the major questions that we get, especially resurfacing and sidewalks are definitely, high on the priority list of many of our residents. Assistant Director, I have two questions actually, and they're somewhat related. The first is if you could talk a little bit about the methodology of how you listed some of the top projects for this year of those major roadways. So if you could share with folks how we choose those projects. One, and then second of all, I think it's also important for folks to also understand the time it takes us sometimes with some of these roadway projects because they are funded through multiple sources. So if you could start there, and then I have a follow-up question.
Thank you, council member. Yeah, we look at a lot of factors like if it's on the high injury network, is it one of our high crash intersections? We look at, of course, funding partners. Maybe ODOT is currently working on a project around that same intersection via a roadway we can tie into. And it's really about, and we look at 311, so we do listen to our colleagues and our constituents on what they're seeing out there, because they're in the streets every day. So we do prioritize based on safety mostly, and really take that kind of approach with our Vision Zero Complete Streets, as well as some of our funding partners, and to kind of continue on with that. Timeline-wise, if you look at projects that we're applying for grant funding through ODOT right now, these are projects that are actually going to go to construction in 2029 at the earliest, or 2030 or 2031. So there's a lot of steps that are involved to get up to that construction point. If it's a matter of designing it, we first start out with a preliminary engineering study, then we'll go into detailed design. A lot of these bigger projects definitely require right-of-way acquisition, which could take up to a year because you're negotiating with property owners. And then we move into the construction phase. So it is a long, drawn-out process for some of our larger, bigger projects, but we're pretty good about keeping those projects moving along and in the pipeline with our funding sources.
With the Vision Zero, with that allocation that we have for Vision Zero, and also with council and the support of council, we've also set aside some dollars for quick fix projects. So similar to that Eastmore Boulevard project that you mentioned, where they're striping, that some of the projects that we know, or some of the streets that might be on the high injury network that are problematic for, that we've heard from residents, or that we know because they're on the high injury network, we've been able to put in some temporary fixes. And some of them are not temporary, meaning like months. It's meaning like years, right? Until we get some of the longer term fixes, or there might be something like striping or other materials that we could put in. I just want to give folks that perspective, because I don't want them to think that because these roadway projects take a while, that doesn't mean that there's something that we can't do to be responsive to some of our more problematic intersections or roads that we have heard from residents that and that we know we have the data that shows us that they are problematic. Correct?
Yeah, that is correct, council member. We're kind of taking as part of our strategy with our Vision Zero initiative, is looking at those short-term fixes. What can we do? Is there some things via striping that visually, make the road look smaller, that slows down speeds? Is there some kind of new speed hump that's out there that's a temporary measure that we can put down to kind of slow down those speeds? It might be a matter of, moving around some signage and things like that. So really kind of hitting those quick fixes with some of our internal staff that we can go out and get done while we are doing these longer, deeper, bigger projects.
And then my last question is just around, you mentioned the allocations for Link Us. We've also had conversations with residents around with the hopeful passage of Link Us in November, that there would be additional dollars that would come in for both infrastructure and infrastructure, just so that everyone's on the same page. We're talking about more sidewalks, we're talking about more trails, we're talking about shared use pathways, where that would be a pathway that could be used that creates a buffer from the street for both pedestrians and cyclists. Those dollars would be in addition to anything that the department is already working on. Those would be over what we're currently budgeting for those improvements that we know that as we tick down the both the projects that we know are on our horizon, what residents are asking for, but this would be over top of those capital improvement budget dollars, correct?
Yes, council member. Those, if the levy is successful in November, those dollars would be in addition to anything that we have in the capital budget now. We kind of look at it, we're going to have the transit part of it, Link Us, which is going to be the buses, the bus stations, things like that. But there's going to be improvements around there that will need to be made in the infrastructure, which is included in some of our capital improvements budget. But some of the transit supportive infrastructure, so you're talking bikeways, you're talking sidewalks, you're talking ways to get to the stations and get to the transit portal, that's what those dollars will be once this passes. We're talking about potentially adding, I believe, over 500 miles of sidewalks and bikeways over the next 20 years as a part of the Link Us initiative in that levy passing.
And the dollars that we're putting aside now for Link Us, it is in preparation for what is coming with Link Us, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted folks to also understand, I want to go back to how I started, which is, this is a moment in time and a budget for now. That does not mean that as residents are coming to this virtual hearing or the additional hearings that we will have, that some of those things on their wish list or their priority list may not be, even if it's not reflective today, that does not mean that it is not reflective in larger plans that we may have, both with the passage of this, but then also in the longer term plans that the department may have in the future for specific intersections or other infrastructure improvements that we want to make. So thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair, for giving me that time with those questions.
Absolutely. Now you have two engineers, so I don't know what we're going to do with council moving forward. No, thank you for that, Madam Chair. Councilman Remy.
Yeah, you pretty much took my question, Councilmember Pro Tem Padilla, but on a finer point, you mentioned Deputy Director Wenzel, but maybe Deputy Director Long. There's also another component that can delay projects, and that is the bond sales when we're doing the construction. And so, right-of-way acquisition, I think of a project like Indianola that was scheduled to be done in 2024, but then we had to do some additional right-of-way acquisition. Other projects like Carl Road, there was an issue because the bond sale pushed things back and pushed us too late in the construction in the season. So if you could just speak a little bit about that, just so people are aware.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Councilmember Remy. Yes, you're 100% correct. Obviously COVID changed everything, but one of the things relevant to the capital budget, it pushed us off cycle. We typically had, an operating budget that was presented to council in the fall, and we had a capital budget that was presented to city council in the spring. And then we would typically have spring adoption of a capital budget and a fall bond sale. And so what we've seen now is it's completely flipped. We're struggling to get back on cycle. We just had a bond sale, I know, as you're aware, so we recently just received cash from 2023. But to your point, we're trying to get back on cycle, and we're hopeful that we could get back to a more traditional spring capital budget and fall bond sale. So I think we're creeping there. It's just going to take us a minute. So if you have any questions, happy to.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously, when the budgets are this big, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and certainly the pandemic and others, took us a little bit off kilter. But I just wanted to point that out to folks because, sometimes they'll call and say, well, I thought my road was going to be done this year, and it is such a lengthy process. For instance, Sinclair Road they're getting the sidewalks installed as we speak, but that's been a multi-year project. And these things, as much as we wish they could come in overnight, they just don't happen to do so. So be patient. They're coming. If we say they're going to be there, they're going to happen. And so it just takes a minute. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for that presentation. Like I do most of my hearings, I want to make sure that our members of the public who are joining us virtually, that we make sure that we answer their questions. One question that came in that Ms. Bump on Facebook mentioned, and I want to address it, the freeways are not the city's responsibility. So absolutely, you're seeing a lot of construction on our freeways and our highways out there. That is the responsibility of ODOT, the Ohio Department of Transportation, so at the state level. And so absolutely there have been plans, as you noted in your comments, that have been on the shelf for many, many years. Really can't speak to their process, but I know that they are trying to play catch up, and especially with the growth in Central Ohio, we'll see construction for a long, very long period of time. And it is a headache, but what I will tell folks is when I see orange cones, I see progress. That means that we are growing. That means that we are getting our infrastructure needs met. But yes, long overdue, but absolutely we will follow up with you depending on where you are, see who your state representative is to get you that contact information so we can get those direct questions. I know that our department works with ODOT, but is not necessarily privy to all of their processes of how they determine the schedule of freeway construction. But thank you for that comment. Additionally, there are some other comments that I wanted to address as well. I think this is a question I'm sorry to the department. Mr. Weaver asked, you mentioned research and we talk about these studies and those types of things. I think we talk about them at a high level because most of us get briefings and we understand those. But can you just name some of those organizations? I know they're both national as well as state when we talk about studies of how we determine where we go and those types of things. I know that there are national standards as well as state standards. So if you could just name some of those organizations that we look to as best practices.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. So yeah, we look with the National Public Works Association, the NWPA, National Public Works Association. And National League of Cities, we're looking at all the comparable jurisdictions like, similar sized cities and other organizations that we're all a part of via our engineers in our department. So.
Thank you. And then I know locally we have, when we talk about these projects, engineers that we utilize to do the studies as well, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yes, they're all local engineers.
Thank you. And then also, I want to address some other comments here. Mr. Ruff, who thinks that Link Us is not needed. I will say that the voters of Columbus and Franklin County will decide that in November. I'm a little biased that at the rate that we are growing, we absolutely need a multimodal transportation system to make sure that we are moving folks around in a dignified way and that get them to and fro. But we will leave that up to the voters. Also, there's a question here from Mr. Ruff about, again, not related to this conversation, but I will address it. How many developers have tax exempt status while owners have to pay more in taxes? Roughly about only 2 to 3% of the entire parcels in the city of Columbus are actually abated. So most of us are paying our fair share, including developers. And when will an investigation that is ongoing be concluded? I am not the investigator. It is ongoing. It is also not pertinent to this conversation, so I will not be able to answer that for you. And then one other comment here about some other things related to things that I will not address because no one on council is a developer. So moving on, next we have Mr. Craig Murphy, who will represent our Recreation and Parks Department and go through their 2024 capital improvements budget. Mr. Murphy, I'll kick it over to you.
Good afternoon, Chair Bankston and members of council, and everyone engaged and interested in learning more about the city's capital budget. My name is Craig Murphy, and I serve as a Deputy Director in Recreation and Parks. And it's my honor today to present a brief review of our proposed capital budget. Recreation and Parks proposes $55,709,000 in new funding for 2024, with $86,222,741 in ongoing projects from previous years' carryover. Last year, Recreation and Parks received its first ever national accreditation. There are 12,000 recreation and park agencies across the country, and only 200 are accredited. It means we follow the national best practices relative to how we operate our agency. Included in that is how we manage our capital program. So for example, in 2023 alone, we had 97 meetings and engagements with the community relative to our capital program. That included meetings with civic associations, area commissions, block watches, and other groups of residents. It's this type of engagement that helps us inform our capital priorities. We received, reviewed, analyzed, and logged over 140 emails and requests asking for capital improvements alone in 2023. This type of engagement helps shape our capital planning, budgeting, ultimately our implementation strategy. We prioritize taking care of recreation and parks assets, renovating and improving existing assets while growing with discipline and having a deep understanding of equity and careful planning. Recreation Parks proposes the following projects in the north side of Columbus. This is only a brief snapshot, and it includes the construction of a new park at West Case Road. This investment of $12 million of 2024 funding will allow the department to build a 56-acre park and make way for the Columbus Metropolitan Library to build a new library facility within that park. In 2024, Recreation Parks has begun a multi-phase renovation of areas within Whetstone Park and will initiate phase 2 of that work and improve the fishing pond, open shelter, and begin the design of the park drive replacement. A community priority from our past 10-year master plan is the development of more greenways and trails. Recreation Parks will utilize $4.2 million to begin construction on a 2.5-mile segment of the Big Walnut Greenway Trail from Little Turtle to Cherry Bottom. The Beatty Recreation Center will utilize $600,000 for minor renovations to its kitchen, lobby, and first floor classrooms. A lot of attention has been given to the department in its acquisition of the Linden Green Line, which is a 7-mile greenway that will provide access to a trail for nearly 130,000 residents living within a 10-minute walk of that trail. CRPD will utilize $300,000 to begin the community engagement process, the preliminary planning, and engineering work for that project. Recreation and Parks will utilize $350,000 of 2024 capital funds to enhance ADA access, mobility at the Franklin Park Adventure Center, which is home to our therapeutic recreation programming. South of Interstate 70, Columbus Recreation and Parks proposes the following projects, which again, this is only a brief snapshot of what all is included. Like the north side, there's additional greenway development planned as we initiate the detailed design of a 2.5-mile stretch of Big Walnut Greenway Trail focused between Winchester Pike and Nafsker Park. On the west side of Columbus, Haunts Park will utilize $1.3 million of 2024 funding for the redevelopment and refresh of that park space. Barrett Community Center and Schiller Community Center are budgeted for $4 million to add air conditioning throughout those buildings. Design for that work is currently underway. McCoy Park will utilize $4.2 million to support phase 1 of a redevelopment of that green space that will result in both a community park and a therapeutic recreation sports park. Deschler Park will utilize an estimated $200,000 to support a new open shelter. And again, greenway improvements are budgeted for the preliminary design of the Big Walnut Greenway Trail. This is $692,000 for a 3.5-mile stretch between Nafsker Park and Main Street. And finally, the Salmons Park Sports Park will have targeted improvements on a ball diamond and additional lighting and renovations to the entry drive and the parking lot. And the construction estimated is about $400,000. Looking to our future in that capital improvement program for 25 through 29, looking towards the north side, Tuttle Pool needs to be replaced. The design is nearly complete, and the construction cost is estimated at $12.5 million for construction. The Performing Arts Center is in need of renovations. The estimated construction on this historic structure is $25 million. In 2023, Recreation Parks adopted a 20-year aquatics plan that will shape the future of its aquatics amenities. Last year, the department replaced pools at both Windsor and Glenwood. Our next step towards growing our aquatics programming is the prioritized addition of a new indoor aquatics facility near Howard Community Center in Northeast Columbus. We'd like to add this to our offering and someday renovate the existing 60-year-old indoor aquatics facility. Design efforts on this new facility will begin in 2025. Construction is estimated at $60 million. Crum Park will utilize approximately $2 million to update the current fishing pond and add pickleball courts where we are currently in design of the pickleball courts. Whetstone phase renovations will utilize $3.1 million for its park drive and the construction of sports courts. The Underground Railroad Playground and Park is currently an idea being developed as an innovative partnership with the library and the community, and will honor the history of the Underground Railroad along the Alum Creek corridor. Renovations to the loop walk around Antrim Lake is under review and would be allocated approximately $500,000. Again, looking at 2025 to 29 toward the south side of Columbus, Recreation and Parks would be prioritizing the following projects. We have nearly completed designs for the replacement of the Marion Franklin Pool and will request funds for the construction of that in 2025. McCoy Park will utilize $10 million towards construction of Phase 2 of the new community park space, therapeutic recreation facilities, and outdoor spray park. Mason Run Park near Eastland and Greenbrier Park in the Far East will become new community parks. In Westland, Freedom Park will utilize approximately $1.5 million to update it with, we will update it with new amenities. A new community park near Hall and Galloway will begin its master planning phase, and it'll start with having funds allocated for the reforestation in this low canopy area. We provided a map as an overview, which only represents projects discussed this evening. In the 2024 budget, there are approximately 114 other project locations we could add to this map in this proposed budget. Recreation and Parks utilizes an allocation model for expending its capital funding. As mentioned earlier, we prioritize the management of our existing assets, and it is why we reserve nearly half of our funding for renovation of existing facilities and parks. However, we're also reminded daily about the need for our growth, which is why we reserve about 7% of our allocation for the acquisition of future parkland and 25% for the new development projects. Today, Recreation Parks has $135 million of capital funds allocated to 83 active projects in over 200 locations within the city of Columbus. Lastly, but importantly, I'd like to share that Recreation Parks is launching its 10-year master planning process, and we will seek input from the community that will help shape the plan and the direction of the department over the next 10 years. Also, we are thrilled to announce the scheduled opening of the Fran Ryan Center in January 2025. This was funded with previous year's capital funds and will serve as an exciting home for a hybrid of arts and wellness programming for older adults. That concludes the Recreation Parks presentation, and I'm available for questions. Thank you, Chair Bankston and members of council for creating this opportunity to share our exciting proposal.
Thank you, Deputy Director, for that presentation. Any questions from my colleagues virtually or in person? Okay. Seeing none, recreation in parks, I think, is one of our greatest assets, but also I think one of the hardest when we talk about growth of the city. Can you just talk about, as the city continues to grow, what the department's kind of philosophy is around new parks, particularly new rec centers, how we balance not only new rec centers where we see growth, but also understanding that we have aging rec centers as well that are smaller, that maybe used to serve one part of a small neighborhood, if you will. But as we continue to grow, the need for larger, more destination centers, and just, again, it's really more of an information question about to inform the public of how we come to these decisions and understanding that we're feeling growth in all quadrants of the city. We continue to grow as a city, and we understand absolutely the need for recreation and parks in all quadrants of our city. But I just want to talk a little bit about the philosophy, because I know there's a lot of cool things that we want to get to about certain minutes of a walk to a park and those types of things. So if you can just give us a little bit more about that philosophy of how we get there, and really where our vision is that we're going with not only this budget, but really more our capital improvements program.
Thank you, Chair Bankston. It's incredibly exciting to be in the Recreation and Parks Department. We care tremendously about service to everyone. We operate with a philosophy that we want everyone to have access to our recreation programming. Want everyone to have access to our parks. And it's a reason why we're very aggressive about acquisition of our park land. I mentioned we have about 7% of our budget allocated towards acquisition. And we may never develop some of these parks in our lifetime. I mean, our point is that we want to develop a big pipeline of future park space as the city continues to grow. When I say 7%, that's roughly $1.5 million. And we actually use that as a leverage towards grants. So we're probably more in the range of about $3 million a year in acquisitions that we're doing. We're extremely aggressive. Over the past 5 years, we've probably acquired about 500 acres of new parkland. And we continue to sort of have a goal this year of 200 acres this year. The 10-minute walk is our metric. It's kind of a national best practice, and we've adopted it here in this city. And so we have a study that we update every 3 years of a land plan that says who in the city today doesn't have access within a 10-minute walk. And so we use that, and we layer it with multiple different equitable sort of issues relative to that. And we prioritize properties. So we know what properties we would go after if they became available, and we ask people if they'll sell properties for this reason. Like I said, I'd say we're pretty aggressive about that acquisition. As I mentioned, and our budget reflects this, is it's easy to it's exciting to grow. I won't say it's easy. It's exciting to have new things. It takes a lot of discipline to take care of the things that we have. And so that's why we spend 48% of our budget on the renovation of existing assets. And we will continue to grow as we find those funds and have that ability. We would put a rec center in every corner if we could. We hear it all the time. Everyone would love to have a rec center in those programs. We do some pretty innovative stuff, though. We're partnering with the schools. We have about 6 sites that are not recreation centers, but we offer recreation programming at those sites. We offer camp at those sites. So, we're looking outside the box, too, in terms of how can we do more and serve more folks and not be restricted by just sometimes the straight limitations of a capital budget, for example.
And thank you for that. And I just always want to lift that up because it's always hard to say it's coming, or it's always hard, but as we continue to grow, we want to do it responsibly and make sure that everyone gets the best of our amenities. Also, we're talking about the capital budget right now, but to operate a rec center takes operational capacity as well. And so as we continue to grow, we will get there. I know that maybe speaking out of turn, but even in our Department of Development, when we see new developments going in, we encourage new green space, and we see developers setting aside green space for parkland as well, because we want to make sure that folks have access to that. But it's not easy. It's not easy, and we do have limited resources. So thank you for that. One thing I do want to point out, because I know that we have done a study, and if you can speak to it really quickly, I know that we talked about the aquatic center that is going in the northeast side of the city. Just really briefly, any update or where we are and we're thinking about that study that we've done about pools, knowing that we need more of them, as we know that climate change continues to be a battle that we are facing here in Central Ohio and across the country. And so just if you could just speak to aquatic centers and pools and any updates that we have on that particular study and how we're moving forward with that.
Thank you, Chair Bankston, members of council. Want to step back for 1 second about the new centers and the replacement of centers and things of that nature. One of the things we also look to do is where we can, we consolidate programs and facilities. The Fran Ryan Center is a good example of that. That's 2 different buildings and 2 different programs that we're bringing into one location that's centralized. So, you know, we're not doing like for like necessarily. We're trying to be efficient and effective in that manner too and save money. On the aquatics center, on the aquatics study, this is very exciting for us because we have 8 pools, number of splash pads, 1 indoor facility, and we're not at the scale we need to be as a city our size. That's one thing we've learned through this study. But before jumping into creating more pools, more things, we again demonstrated some discipline around replacing the pools that needed to be replaced first. So, which is why we prioritize the replacement of Windsor and Glenwood Pool. We are in design, 90% complete for Tuttle Pool and 90% complete in design for Marion Franklin pools. So we are prioritizing the replacement of those pools, and that puts us then in a position to grow. And we've identified there's really 3 areas of Columbus that have gaps relative to the aquatics deserts, southeast, southwest, and north. And so we've targeted and looking at a partnership with the schools, which is pretty innovative and new. The school board approved this partnership from the school's perspective, and we are getting ready to put out a design for a new indoor aquatic center right by Mifflin Middle School and Howard Community Center. And the goal is really to create like a community campus of some shared facilities. We would love to see more kids learning to swim. We want to see adults learn to swim. We think it's a life safety skill as well. And having something centralized in partnership with the school creates that ability to create a curriculum around aquatics education. So we're very excited about that. We will very soon be putting out a bid for the design of that new facility and begin imagining what that future looks like.
And thank you for that, Deputy Director, and thank you for also, I think, hitting on this point. When we talk about equity, yes, it is about serving the entire city, but it's also about making sure those legacy facilities in our neighborhoods that are disproportionately, in many cases, low-income or black and brown neighborhoods also have the top facilities, because it would be inequitable for us to let those facilities deteriorate while we build new facilities in other parts of our city without first addressing the issues that we've had at some of our pools. I think about a place like Windsor Pool in Linden. And also when we're redoing these pools, we're in many cases, I see growing its capacity to serve more people as well. And so I just want to highlight that yes, we have a shortage and we have to catch up, but we also have to make sure that the current facilities that we have serve those residents because they deserve the best quality service like any other part of our city. So I just want to make sure that I hit on that because that's important for me, particularly when I think about places like Driving Park, places like our pool in the Hilltop, Windsor Pool, and so many others. Next, we're going to move on, and I'm going to try to move more quickly because I told you I would have you out of here by 6 o'clock. Nobody's wives yelling at me. Next, we have Dan G. With our Department of Public Safety to share the Department of Public Safety's proposal. Dan, are you there?
Thank you, Chair Bankston. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you very much. Chair Bankston, Safety Chair Remy, members of council, members of the community, on behalf of Safety Director Kate Bisciotti, I thank you for allowing me to present to you information regarding the Public Safety 2024 capital budget. The budget for public safety is proposed is $66.4 million in new funding and $54.5 million in carryover funds for an approximate total of $120.9 million. The department is focused on the mayor's priorities of protecting Columbus neighborhoods by designing and constructing new police and fire facilities, procuring new fire apparatus, and various improvements to other public safety facilities. These investments support safe and efficient facilities and vehicles for public safety employees who provide essential services, as well as protect the lives and property of Columbus residents. These investments also promote safe and resilient communities as part of the mayor's Opportunity Rising initiative. With respect to investments on the northern part of Columbus, a major investment is being made at the Carolyn Piedmont Avenue location, where the city will construct a public safety campus that will consist of a real-time crime center, a 911 emergency communications center, an emergency operations center, a crime gun intelligence center, and a new police substation 2. The present one, of course, is at Parkwood Avenue. Demolition of this site was completed late last year, and an architectural design is presently underway for the entire campus. Public Safety anticipates bidding for the construction in mid-2025. This capital budget allocates $50 million for this activity. Fire Station 36, which will be located at Central College and Harlem Roads on the far northeast side of the city. $15 million in carryover funding is available to construct this fire station on property previously acquired by the city. Public Safety anticipates construction on Fire Station 36 to commence this year with completion in late 2025. A combination of new and carryover funds totaling $3.3 million are also included for the design of a police substation in the Easton area. Carryover funds were recently legislated by council to begin this design, which will replace the current substation on Allery Road. There is also $800,000 in carryover funds to upgrade the women's restroom and locker room facilities at Fire Station 24 at the corner of Morse and Carl Roads. This capital budget includes a number of items for citywide public safety projects, of which you will notice they're going to be listed on both the north and south side of the presentation. For instance, the budget proposes $10 million to procure fire apparatus, which consists of ladders, engines, heavy rescue, and EMS response vehicles. These vehicles may be assigned to any of the division's fire stations across the city based upon need. The budget also includes approximately $6.25 million in a combination of new funds and carryover funds for general renovations and improvements at our facilities. The fire division has 34 fire stations. Police has nearly 20 precinct facilities, as well as academy buildings that typically need general improvements, such as pavement restorations, generator replacements, HVAC upgrades, roof and window replacements, security and life safety upgrades, and other facility improvements. Finally, with respect to citywide projects, there is approximately $4 million in carryover funds that will be used to upgrade telecommunications equipment, fire dispatching systems, and replace public safety radios. With respect to projects on the south side of Columbus, there is carryover funding of $15.3 million included to resurface the vehicle storage area at the city impound lot. There's also $800,000 in capital funds included to relocate and design the storage and training facility for the fire bomb units, and approximately $15 million in carryover funds to construct a new police substation 19 in the Hilltop on Sullivan Avenue. Land was acquired in late 2022 for this substation, and a design is presently underway. Construction should begin before year end. There is $2.5 million also proposed in new funding to renovate the HVAC at the Fire Training Academy on Parsons Avenue. The current equipment there is the original to this building, which is the old Worley High School that Columbus acquired in the 1990s. Finally, there is $700,000 in carryover funds to upgrade the women's restroom and locker facilities at Fire Station 22 on Parsons Avenue. You may notice that's the second time I've talked about upgrading women's restrooms and locker facilities. Several of our older fire stations, at a time where we had obviously a lot more men working as firefighters, did not contemplate significant facilities for our women. So we're going back and retrofitting several of our fire stations. Of course, new fire stations that we build today have fantastic accommodations for our women firefighters. And a lot of that's due to the success of our recruitment as well and getting more females into the fire service. With respect to the capital improvements projects as part of the plan, we anticipate additional funding each year for fire apparatus as well as some general renovation funds. As to new fire stations and substations and larger improvements, those funding priorities are typically determined over the next 12 to 24 months. And certainly while we anticipate the funds will be available, obviously we work with finance on those exact amounts down the road and yet to be determined. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Just one thing I do want to point out for our residents. You heard Deputy Director there mention, in many cases, carryover dollars. So the budget that we're looking at is both new money that we're going to borrow to do projects, but also carryover dollars from projects that either were delayed or weren't able to be spent in last year's budget. So that's when you see that number. So when we talk about that $1.99 billion, it is inclusive of both new spending as well as authorizing the administration to spend dollars that weren't spent in the previous budget. So I know that can get a little confusing there, so I wanted to make that clarification. I'm looking at my chair of safety. He does not have any questions. Any of my colleagues virtually have any questions for safety? All right, hearing none, we will move on. Again, thank you for your presentation. Okay, sorry, thought I heard someone. Next, we have Mr. Bill Webster with the Department of Development, who will present their 2024 capital improvements budget. Mr. Webster, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Bankston, members of council. On behalf of Director Stevens and the Department of Development, I'm pleased to present our 24 capital improvement budget. There we go. Our budget consists of $74 million in carryover and approximately $103 million in new proposed funding, totaling $177 million. 60% of our budget, or $104 million, is being invested in our affordable housing strategy. This funding represents investments in projects providing affordable housing for families, as well as seniors and individuals experiencing homelessness, and homeownership opportunities for middle-income and first-time home buyers. Build, invest, preserve, and include are our guiding principles. This is a four-pronged strategy to achieve our affordable housing goals. These principles are the foundation of our capital planning. We need to build more housing at all price points. We need to invest in affordable housing for people making less than $50,000 annually. We need to preserve our existing housing with grants to keep homes safe. And then lastly, we need to include housing for everyone that needs access to affordable housing. All right, looking to the north side, we have a $50 million plan for projects in the coming year for affordable housing. This includes support for new affordable rental units, new affordable home ownership, preservation of existing home ownership, and support for those experiencing homelessness in our community. Now, currently, we have projects that are totaling 700 new affordable units, 100 new home ownership opportunities for middle-income and first-time home buyers, as well as $5 billion planned for permanent supportive housing for those that are exiting homelessness. We are also proposing $7 million for capital grants to nonprofit partners to build or make facility improvements. This is a part of our capital campaign program that we do. Our nonprofit partners help us to expand our reach into the community. For the north side, grants include Zora's House. Again, these are facility renovations. Furniture Bank of Central Ohio, and the Center for Entrepreneurial Development. In addition, we're proposing $5.5 million to facilitate real estate acquisition supporting community development. This also includes money to help acquire the real estate needed to support our Lincus corridors. And then lastly, but not least important, is $350,000 for our annual shelter improvements. Looking to the south side, we also have $50 million planned in the coming year for affordable housing to be invested in the same way as mentioned, rental, permanent supportive housing, housing at all income levels. In addition, on the south side, we are working very closely with the Rickenbacker Airport to provide $4 million improvements supporting economic development in the area. These improvements will unlock 320 acres of land to be developed in the Rickenbacker Global Logistics Park. This will be a key factor to advancing our tradition of logistics excellence in Columbus. We are also proposing $5 million for capital grants to nonprofits on the south side. Grants this year include Star House, the Mid-Ohio Food Collective, and Maryhaven, and then real estate acquisition of $5.5 million on the south side, bringing us to a total of a little over $10 million, as well as another injection of annual shelter improvements. Over the next 5 years, we plan to continue investing heavily in community-driven developments. Our goal is $50 million annually in affordable housing, $10 million annually in real estate acquisition, $5 million annually to fund small-scale urban redevelopment projects, as well as shelter improvements. On the south side, as with the north side, we're looking to invest in affordable housing equally on the south side. In addition to the money in the '24 capital budget, we are proposing an additional $4 million to complete the commitments to the infrastructure improvements surrounding the Rickenbacker area. All right, our final slide includes some pics of recent projects from our 22 and 23 investments of $50 million. I want to point out that our investment of $50 million has generated $220 million in private investment of affordable housing and 1,200 new affordable units. With that information, I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director Webster, and I get to work with you on a weekly basis, so a lot of my questions get answered on a weekly basis. But I want to just hone in on the affordable housing number because I think it's impressive. Of course, as we know, we have a housing crisis, and absolutely there's more that needs to be done. And I know that there's a larger goal for the region. Just talk about our philosophy around those affordable housing dollars. And what I mean specifically by that, I know what I'm looking for and what I want to talk to is that it's really around leveraging other dollars. And so if you could just speak to that and those AMIs and that kind of a thing, what we're doing around affordability, that would be really helpful.
Chair Bankston, it's a good question, and it's the primary part of our philosophy. So as I mentioned with these dollars here, we're investing $50 million. That is generating $220 million in investments. When we put money into our projects, we are primarily helping to facilitate the developers doing more. So when a developer proposes a project, we sit down with the developer, we look at the budget, we look at costs on the on-site, cost in the right-of-way, and when we utilize our affordable housing dollars, our goals are to inject our money into the project in a way that allows them to take the project further. We ultimately want to help us achieve our community goals by reducing their overall economic expenses in a ways that allow them to increase their project expenditures. That generates what we're looking for is a 2, 3, and even 4 to 1 match of our money in order to achieve the economic impact that the project we want to have on the community.
And again, right, that is that we are asking, when we say we want developers to go further, that means further as far as affordability, deeper in the affordability chain. So 80% or 60% AMI. And for many folks, we say AMI, that means area median income. 60 and 80%, we're talking about teachers and firefighters and entry police officers. We're talking about folks that are working who yet can't afford safe, dependable housing in our community. And I point this out because many folks say to me, why won't you just build more or just build an entire project? We wouldn't get as many units as we need with that. And so we're leveraging, again, those private dollars from a developer and really putting our money behind our philosophy that if you build something in the city of Columbus and you're going to receive an incentive from this community, there needs to be some type of affordability, meaning that working class folks who work in the city of Columbus should be able to live in live in the city.
Councilmember Bankston, you're absolutely correct. Housing should not be a luxury. It should be a necessity that everybody has access to at the price point that they need it to be. We want people to be able to afford housing in the community that they want to live in. And we utilize our investments to ensure that we're building housing that meet people where they need us to meet them. That's a key criteria. So in my comments, I spoke about we've got the most in need, people that are exiting homelessness. We've got the middle individuals, younger married couples perhaps, teachers, et cetera. We've got folks that are that middle slice that need workforce level housing. We want to make sure that we're utilizing our $100 million from a citywide approach to generate all the housing that we need, ultimately meeting the goals of the program.
Absolutely. And right now we're in a place where we need more units to make sure that, again, right now there's a supply and demand issue. Right, we have more people moving to this region, moving into this community, and not enough housing. And like basic economics, if you have a scarcity, the price of it goes up. And so when we see things that were once renting for $700 or $800 a month, now at $1,200 or $1,500 a month, that's just a natural means of the market. And so we have to get ahead of that. And the way that we do that, well, one way I should say, is deeply affordable, subsidized housing, which we have partners at the federal level that are working with us on that, and at the state level, low-income housing tax credits and so forth. But also it is about driving more supply so that there's more competition in the market, so that we have more supply than demand to be able to really right-size and level those price points. And so, again, no comment there or question, but just really wanted to make sure that we drive home that philosophy as to we're using these dollars that taxpayers voted for to leverage more dollars to be able to infuse affordability, not into one project, but to infuse affordability into every part of this city. Because whether you are a teacher at East High School or whether you are a nurse on the South Side, you should be able to live in any part of our community and be able to have the amenities that everyone is able and afforded to, regardless of your zip code, regardless of your income bracket. So I just want to point that out. Thank you, Deputy Director Webster, for your presentation. Last but not least, we have Mr. Tom Crawford, our Deputy Director with the Department of Public Utilities, to go through their budget as well. Tom, I'll kick it over to you.
I'm joining via WebEx this afternoon, so I want to start by making sure I can be heard. Good afternoon, everyone.
Oh, good afternoon.
Okay, good. I was waiting for a response. My name's Tom Crawford, and I'm actually the Capital Fiscal Manager for the Department of Public Utilities. Typically, people have no idea what Capital Fiscal Manager means. And for public utilities, it means my team puts together the capital improvement budget, decides upon funding sources, bids the projects, contracts the projects, and pays the invoices for the projects. And for the next few minutes, I get to talk to you about the department's capital improvement plan. As this slide shows, we're starting with the overall numbers. There's $945 million in new funding for planned projects in 2024, with $205 million in carryover funding in 2024. And as it was touched on earlier, I want you to think of carryover funding as the money for projects we did not finish contracting in the previous year. Our total capital plan for 2024 to 2029 is $5.5 billion spent on over 500 projects. Moving to the next slide. None of those numbers mean anything unless you know what we do with the funding. So I need us to move on to the next slide. Thank you. We treat and distribute 53 billion gallons of water a year to area residents. To give some perspective of this, picture Lake Erie in your mind. We could fill it in only 6.6 years. We treat 68 billion gallons of wastewater a year. And I'm going to spare you a mental image on this one, but our sanitary sewers put end to end would stretch from Columbus to Alaska, or could stretch from Columbus to the equator, depending upon how you like your weather. We do stormwater management, and our stormwater sewers put end to end are not quite as long as the sanitary sewer, but it would also reach Alaska from here. We provide electricity and streetlights, enough electricity to power all of Marietta, Ohio. And we do sustainability. We take care of all of this infrastructure while protecting natural resources. The next slide lists our guiding principles, which are to provide these services in a quality, accessible manner, to maintain the infrastructure we have already built while looking to the future to ensure we can support expected population growth while meeting regulatory requirements, and to balance these things with affordable rates and discount programs. Which brings us to the next slide. It's a closer look at some of our projects, starting with some top projects in the north side of Columbus in 2024 and 2025. And speaking of looking to the future, at the top of the list is the new water plant. The new plant is needed for the continued population growth projected for Central Ohio. The last new water plant opening in Columbus was way back in 1979. There are Blueprint Columbus projects. Several of these projects are underway and planned. They eliminate sewer overflows. Sewer overflows cause basement flooding and also cause wastewater to go to streams and rivers instead of to treatment plants. And many other planned projects will improve or maintain our infrastructure for water lines, street lights, and stormwater. We also have improvements planned for 2 existing water plants. For the south side of Columbus in 2024 and 2025, there are also many projects to improve or maintain our water lines, our street lights, and stormwater infrastructure. Among them are the Moeller Street Overflow Intercepting Sewer Project. This addresses basement flooding along with keeping wastewater and stormwater separate. We're expanding the Southerly Wastewater Treatment Facility and protecting it from floods. And we're helping the environment and becoming more energy efficient by building a bioenergy facility. It will generate power for the Southerly Wastewater Treatment Facility through the processing of waste. Our next slide is a sampling of the top projects planned for the north side of Columbus through 2029. Most of them are for you to read through, not for me to talk through them. As a summary, there are over $811 million in projects across 24 Columbus communities. Blueprint Columbus projects will continue to be a major spend on the north side of Columbus in the coming years. The next slide is a sampling of the top projects planned for the south side of Columbus through 2029. There are over $747 million in projects across 8 Columbus communities. Once again, Blueprint Columbus projects are also prominent on the south side, along with the Three Creek Sanitary Sewer Tunnel, currently estimated to be a $249 million infrastructure investment. The next slide shows that among the lighting improvements across the city is the Smart Street Lighting Project. This project reduces energy consumption, lowers the city carbon footprint, improves safety. Phase 1 is complete, which was in the Hilltop. Phases 2 and 3 have started, and there are 17 phases to follow. The fourth water plant was mentioned earlier and is on the next slide, and is a major investment in the city's future. It is currently estimated to cost $2 billion to bring online. Once online, it will be able to produce 50 million gallons of water daily. To put that in perspective, that can fill 102 Olympic-sized swimming pools a day, or it can fill Buckeye Lake every 4.5 days. It will ensure we have a safe and plentiful water supply for the foreseeable future. The next slide talks about the Blueprint Columbus project, which was mentioned several times in this presentation. This is a citywide project. It keeps rainwater out of the sanitary sewers and directs it to storm sewers where it belongs. It has 4 pillars: green infrastructure, the building of rain gardens and using porous pavement to slow and clean rainwater before it enters rivers and streams. Roof redirection, changing downspouts to route rainwater to a pipe leading to the street. The voluntary sump pump program, free sump pump installation to prevent basement flooding, and lateral lining. This is lining the pipe that connects the residents to the city sanitary sewer, preventing rainwater from entering cracks in this pipe. Rainwater that enters those cracks can flood basements or overwhelm the sanitary sewer. So that brings us to the last slide. This is the point where I get to see if I put you to sleep or kept you awake. It's question time. You can ask questions now, or you can contact me via the information on the screen.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford, and I just upgraded you to Deputy Director, so I'll make sure I talk to Director Atha about that. And also thank you for making public utilities, I think, refreshing to hear. I always say this when we do our public hearings: this is probably some of the most important infrastructure that we invest in, and it is also the infrastructure that we don't see often. It's underground, or it's lights that we see, but oftentimes it's those projects that you're like, what the hell are they doing and why is it taking so long? But it keeps our most critical resource, water. When we talk about what the future is from both us as human beings as well as economic development, as a growth, water is our most critical resource, and it makes sure that we keep that clean, safe, and sanitary for all our residents, but also the customers that we serve. So thank you. I mean, it's a critical piece of it. The only question I have, and I just really want you to highlight it, and I know we may not have the final numbers yet, when we talk about the fourth water plant that is critical to our current needs as well as our future needs. $2 billion is a lot of investment of public dollars. Again, our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you can just speak to our diversity spend goals, if you can, on that, or what we ideally are aiming for that project.
Well, it will vary depending upon what we're doing, but for the design projects of it, we're mostly around 15 to 20% with our MBE and WBE firms as the goal. The construction projects, we're getting ready to do the site development and the electrical substation, and we're assigned a goal of about 10% for that. And that's about $250 million worth of construction that will occur with that 10% goal on it. And then for the other phases of the plant, we're not there yet. So we don't have goals assigned to them, or not ready to talk to ODI about the goals that will be assigned.
Thank you for that. And again, as Chair of Economic Development, Small Minority Business, ODI is under my purview. And what we like to do with these projects is assign goals based off of the capacity and the work to make sure that, one, that we can meet them, but two, that we're growing the capacity here in Columbus and the Central Ohio region. So once we get to that phase, we'll definitely look forward to that. But I just want to reiterate to the public our commitment to our diversity and equity goals for the city. I'm sure there are much more sustainable questions that our Chair of Public Utilities and Sustainability will ask you, Councilmember White, but he is much smarter than me on those things, so I will leave those questions to him. One other question I have, and I just want to clarify, we'll double back to our Department of Development as well. When we talk about Northeast and West, can you just roughly give us how we're dividing those quadrants of the city, Mr. Crawford, and then I will go back to our Department of Development, Mr. Webster, for that as well.
Mostly along Interstate 70 and Interstate 71.
Gotcha. And I figured, I just wanted to make sure. And then, Deputy Director Webster, I know you mentioned in your presentation north and south from the affordable housing projects. Can you just tell us roughly what those boundaries are when we talk about north and south? I'm sure that's inclusive of east and west sides of the city, but just want to make sure that we're capturing that.
So we really don't have boundaries in the traditional sense. I mean, I think what optimally, we want to see the 100 million really, I'm going to say it, equally dispersed throughout the city. We want to be able to intermix housing at all different kinds of levels in all parts of the city while preserving the core housing in our city. But generally speaking, I-70, north of that, when we started talking about projects like Zora's House, et cetera, north of that, and then Mary Haven projects south of I-70, generally
Gotcha.
speaking.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I clarified that. I just had a question come through on the chat and just wanted to make sure I addressed it. So with that, we have come to the end of all of our departments' heads and their presentations. So again, thank you all for that and all the work that you have done. By the start of tonight's hearing, our office had not received any requests to testify on the budget tonight. And I did address some of those questions that we have during the live stream. Again, you can continue to engage with us and send questions to my office as well. In conclusion, really quickly, Deputy Director Long, if you can just tell folks, and we'll make sure that we get it out to people, there's a lot of information, a lot of numbers that we just went through, but where can folks, if they want to dive into this and go through some of these numbers on the city's website, where can they go to access that?
Yes, thank you, Chair Bankston. You're absolutely correct. There's just a wealth of information on the 2024 capital budget and the capital improvement program. And any interested parties can go to www.columbus.gov/capital. And again, there's a wealth of information on the capital budget at that location. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, that was www.columbus.gov/capital. I'll ask one of our team members from council, if you can type that in the chat on both YouTube and Facebook for us really quickly, just so folks can have that. But again, we will also make sure that that's accessible to you in other means as well. Seeing no additional questions or comments from my colleagues or those watching, this concludes this evening's hearing. And again, I want to finish by thanking all of our department representatives that are here in the mayor's office for putting together this budget and getting it to us. Again, I want to thank my colleagues who were present, but also all of my colleagues that I serve with on the dais for their work in the coming weeks, and all of the residents who took the time to participate tonight or who will be with us later in this process. This sort of civic participation is essential for municipal government to operate effectively. We know that there are operational things, everyday things that we have to do. You know, we have to pave the streets and we have to fix our street lights and sewer and water and all of that. But also your feedback on things such as Zora's House and other investments in other external agencies also help to make sure that Columbus is a vibrant and thriving city for all. So your feedback is absolutely taken into consideration, and it's something that we use to make sure that we are making the investments that are not simply just necessary, but also that are optimal for your side of town, because at the end of the day, you're the resident expert where you live. You drive your streets, you go to your parks, you know them better than I do. We are a large city, 225 square miles. You can fit both Cincinnati and Cleveland inside of us, both by population and by land mass. And so oftentimes, if we don't know what's going on in your side of the town, we just don't simply know. It's not that we don't care, but we don't know. And so that's why 311 is there for you, as well as your district representatives, for them to understand your side of a town intimately. And with us being a large city, that means, and oftentimes, that it may take time to get to that one specific need that you have. But know that we are analyzing that information, that we're making investments that are optimal, that best put your tax dollars to use for all of us to make sure that we have a city that is the best place to live, work, and raise a family. The next hearing will be in person and will take place this coming Monday, July 8th. Again, that's this Monday, July 8th, at Linden Community Center. That's at 1350 Briarwood Avenue. That will start at 6 p.m. We'll have the same format, so our departments will present, and we will have questions and comments from the audience. But again, feel free to share this link to folks as well. And again, if you would like to speak at the hearing or want to send us information or input, you can continue to engage with my office. You can send information to my legislative analyst, Jonathan Brown, at jbbrown@columbus.gov prior to the hearing. The final hearing will take place next Tuesday, so just after the one next Monday, next Tuesday, July 9th, at the Columbus Fire Training Academy on the south side, located at 3639 Parsons Avenue. Again, that will start at 6 p.m. With that, have a good evening, Columbus, and thank you all for being here.